Welcome to Precky Tales, where stories come alive with drama, twists, and lessons you won't forget. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and drop a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. The air inside the Cruz estate smelled like cold marble, old money, and too much perfume. Alina stood just inside the foyer, clutching her purse like it might grow legs and run away. She hadn't been here in over 7 years. Not since her grandfather, Don Mateo Cruz, pulled her aside after a family dinner and whispered, "You don't belong with them." But that doesn't mean you don't belong. She had been 19 then. Now she was 26. Older. Stronger. But walking into this house still made her feel like a child. The main hall was full of relatives dressed in expensive black, more fashion than grief. There was her Aunt Margot, practically dripping with pearls. Her cousins Trevor and Elise, sitting with identical bored expressions on opposite ends of the leather couch, both sipping drinks that looked too strong for a weekday morning. No one looked at her. No one said her name. But they all noticed her. She could feel it in the stillness of the room. The outsider had returned. "Alina," a man's voice called. She turned. Mr. Sebastian Locke, her grandfather's longtime attorney, stood at the far end of the hallway, papers in one hand, glasses halfway down his nose. "Please," he said, "everyone into the study." As the family shuffled into the study, Alina caught a whisper from behind her. It was Elise. "What is she doing here?" Trevor snorted, probably hoping for a sympathy check. "Pathetic." Alina said nothing. She'd learned long ago. In this family, silence was the sharpest weapon. The study was dimly lit, the curtains drawn. Portraits of ancestors who likely owned sugar plantations loomed above the fireplace. Mr. Locke adjusted his glasses, cleared his throat, and began reading. "Don Mateo Cruz, in sound mind and body, declares this to be his final will and testament." The room was still. Everyone leaned in, Trevor looking smug, Margot already half smiling. "To my daughter, Margot Cruz, I leave the villa in Marbella and the summer house in Lake Tahoe." Margot exhaled, sharply, satisfied. "To my grandchildren, Elise and Trevor Cruz, I leave my personal wine collection, art holdings, and any real estate not specified elsewhere." Elise smirked. Trevor fist bumped the air. Locke continued. "And to Alina Rose Cruz, granddaughter of my late son Miguel." Everyone shifted. Eyes widened. Margot sat up straighter. "I leave full ownership of Cruz Holdings LLC, all associated patents, and a controlling interest in every subsidiary under the Cruz name, including 72% of the Cruz Trust, liquid assets, and all intellectual property registered in the last 10 years. Silence. Then Margot's voice, low and cutting. "What did you just say?" Alina blinked. "Wait, what?" Mr. Locke nodded solemnly. "You're the primary heir, Ms. Cruz, effective immediately." "No, this is some kind of mistake." Margot's voice rose like boiling water. "My children, Trevor, he's the rightful heir. This girl, she's nothing. She's not even blood. She's more Cruz than any of you," Locke said sharply. "She's the only one who ever visited him in the hospital. She's the only one who never asked for anything." Trevor stood. "You expect me to believe Grandpa left everything to a failed barista with a liberal arts degree?" Alina stood slowly, her heart pounding like a war drum. "I didn't ask for this." "No," Margot hissed. "But you came here knowing. You always had your eye on the money." Alina turned to Mr. Locke. "Is this final?" He nodded. "Signed, notarized, and witnessed. I have a video statement, if you'd like me to—" "No," Margot snapped. "Get out." Alina stared at her. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," Margot said, rising to full height. "Get out of this house. You're not part of this family. Not anymore." Trevor added, "You think you're someone now? You're a leech." A technicality. Elise just laughed. What a plot twist. The maid inherits the mansion. Alina felt her pulse in her ears. Her face burned, but her voice stayed level. My grandfather wanted this, she said, whether you understand it or not. Margot leaned in, and you'll regret accepting it. Every second. Alina looked her dead in the eye. We'll see. They didn't even let her stay for the catered lunch. Alina found herself walking down the long front steps of the estate with no one behind her, no one beside her, and no idea where to go next. Her phone buzzed in her purse. A message from Mr. Locke. Call me. There's more. She ducked around the side of the building, leaned against the old iron gate, and called him. Locke speaking. It's me. I figured you'd want the full breakdown. You inherited more than money. What do you mean? Cruise Holdings is more valuable than any of them realize. But more importantly, he left you a warehouse on the east end of the city. A warehouse? Not just any warehouse. That was where Don Matteo started his first private investment project. It's off-grid, not listed on paper. Alina blinked. Why give me that? Because that's where he built his empire. Not here, not in this mansion. There's something in there. Something he wanted you to have. You were his legacy, not them. That night, Alina returned to the guest room she'd rented on Airbnb. A far cry from the velvet-draped bedroom she used to visit as a child at the cruise estate. She stared at herself in the mirror. Same eyes, same skin, same girl, just a different world now. She scrolled through social media. Trevor had posted a selfie with the caption, "Some people inherit class. Others just inherit paperwork." Hashtag family drama. The comments were full of gossip. Elise had gone live earlier, crying about how she'd been cut out of everything by someone who never earned it. But no one knew the truth. Matteo had watched all of them from the shadows, seen how they stopped visiting, how they spent his money like it was oxygen, and how Alina, the quiet granddaughter of his first son, had sent him books, visited him on weekends, brought him soup when he had pneumonia. Now, they hated her for it, and yet the weight on her shoulders felt unbearable. A call came in, Mr. Locke again. "There's one more thing," he said. "I have the keys to the warehouse. Do you want to meet me there tomorrow?" Alina nodded to herself. Yes. She didn't know what was inside that building, but it was time to find out. The next morning was gray and damp. The warehouse sat behind a chain-link fence in a forgotten part of the city, overgrown weeds, graffiti on the brick walls, broken windows. It looked like nothing. A dead end. Mr. Locke handed her the keys and a thin manila folder. These are the original blueprints, and Matteo's private journal entries. Alina unlocked the rusted door. Inside wasn't nothing. It was everything. Neon glow computer monitors still blinked from battery backups. Tables lined with unfinished prototypes, models, scribbled notes. In the center was a clear glass case holding a sleek, palm-sized medical device. "What's this?" she asked. Locke stepped forward. "It's the future." Matteo was funding a team that built early detection health tech. The kind that could prevent strokes, cancer, you name it. They were months away from launch. Alina turned slowly. "And it's all here?" "Yours." She swallowed. "Do you think they know about this?" Locke chuckled. "If they did, you'd already be in court." Alina stared at the device. Her heart beat louder than it ever had. They had kicked her out with nothing but a warehouse. They didn't know they had handed her the match that would burn their legacy down and let her build her own. Alina stood in the center of the warehouse, surrounded by dusty light filtering through grimy windows and scattered blueprints left by her grandfather. The space was cold, lifeless, yet somehow breathing with potential. What others saw as a forgotten structure on the edge of nowhere, she saw as a seed. Don Mateo Cruz had trusted her with more than memories. He had left her a prototype, a purpose, and a path, even if that path was tangled in wires and half-finished circuits. With Dr. Kenji Rao by her side, the reclusive engineer who once worked in secret with Mateo, they worked day and night to bring the device to life. It was sleek, brilliant, a palm-sized diagnostic scanner that could read vital signs and detect early health risks in less than 60 seconds. They called it Pulse One. The funding pitch was Alina's first real test. She presented it in a boardroom full of skeptical investors wearing tailored suits, sitting behind frosted glass with hands steepled and eyebrows raised. She didn't stumble. She didn't stammer. She spoke the truth. "I was kicked out of the Cruz family because they thought I was worth nothing," she said, pausing as their pens stopped moving. "But I've inherited more than money. I've inherited innovation. This isn't about revenge. This is about changing lives." The silence that followed was heavy, unblinking. Then someone clapped. 3 weeks later, a wire hit her company's account. $1.5 million in seed funding. It was the first time in her life she truly believed she could make something of her own. Not borrowed, not stolen, not inherited by default, but built from the ground up. That night, she sat cross-legged on the concrete floor of the warehouse, laptop glowing beside her, her fingers tracing the edge of the Pulse One prototype like it was sacred. "Thank you, Grandpa," she whispered into the dark. "I won't waste it." Word hadn't yet reached the Cruz family. To them, Alina was still the discarded girl with no last name that mattered. They were busy planning Margot's 60th birthday, an event so decadent it had its own planning committee, signature champagne, and drone photographers. The invitation, of course, never came. Elise posted stories from the pre-party fitting, all velvet gowns and smug captions. Trevor filmed a slow-motion spin, with 2 blondes clinging to his arms. They were as unaware as ever. Alina didn't reply to the text Elise sent her, the one that read, "Hope the warehouse has heat faced with tears of joy. #not invited." Instead, she stayed up that night finalizing the details of a very different event, Pulse One's official press launch. While the Cruz estate filled with laughter, champagne flutes, and sycophants toasting Margot's greatness, Alina quietly published a global press release at exactly 8:15 p.m., the same moment Margot stood to give her birthday speech. The headline hit tech blogs like lightning. From warehouse to wellness, Pulse One secures $12 million in series of funding. Within hours, her inbox flooded. Doctors, journalists, health tech influencers. Someone even tagged her in a TikTok saying, "Imagine giving the poor cousin a warehouse, and she turns it into an empire." By morning, Pulse One was trending in 3 countries. And the Cruz family? They didn't even know yet what had happened, but they were about to. It began with a murmur. A phone call Margot took over brunch with her banker. He'd casually mentioned Pulse One and its connection to Alina Cruz, assuming Margot already knew. She didn't. "What is Pulse One?" she asked him, her voice sharp behind her diamonds. "Your niece's company," he replied. "Quite impressive. You must be thrilled." Thrilled? No. Appalled. Later that day, Elise's influencer friend sent her a viral video featuring Alina's Forbes photo shoot. The warehouse in soft light, Alina standing barefoot in the center of it all, dressed in simplicity and power. Trevor found out during a poker game, when one of his friends jokingly asked if he was going to apply to work for his cousin, the millionaire. Alina had said nothing to any of them. She hadn't posted, hadn't gloated, hadn't thrown a single punch. But the silence, the still, ruthless silence of her success, was louder than anything else. Margot cracked first. She texted Alina late at night. "It's been too long. I think we should talk." No apology, no humility, just veiled desperation. Trevor followed with a message asking if she was in town and maybe down to catch up. Elise sent a cheerful, airy message offering to collab on her startup, claiming they were family after all. Alina read the messages and smiled without humor. They hadn't changed. They had simply circled back, now that she was no longer disposable. Devin, Alina's newly hired publicist, insisted the world needed to hear her story. At some point, Devin had said, "You either control the narrative or someone else tells a more comfortable lie." Reluctantly, Alina agreed. The Forbes interview was short, professional, and exact. The journalist, a sharp-eyed woman named Clarissa, asked smart, deliberate questions. "Did your family know about Pulse One when they gave you the warehouse?" "No," Alina answered. "They didn't know what was inside. They didn't care." "Do you think they'll try to come back into your life now that you've succeeded?" "They already are." The article dropped on a Monday morning. By Tuesday, Alina's inbox had tripled in volume. Her story was everywhere, the forgotten heiress who turned betrayal into an empire. Photos of her standing in front of the now-renovated warehouse. A shot of her as a child, arm around Don Mateo. A viral pull quote, "They gave me nothing but a broken building, so I built something unbreakable." The Cruz family went into PR panic mode. But it was too late. The public loved the underdog story. The girl they kicked out was now building the kind of legacy they thought they owned by blood. The dinner invitation arrived in a cream envelope, delivered by courier. Alina didn't open it for 3 days. When she finally did, it was handwritten in Margot's ornate cursive, sealed with the Cruz family crest. "We'd love to reconnect. Just a quiet dinner. No pressure. Just love. Family is forever." It was the first time the word family had been directed at her in years. She knew better. Still, she went. She wore black. Nothing flashy, nothing loud. But when she entered the grand foyer of the Cruz estate, the room fell into an eerie silence. Margot greeted her with an air kiss that grazed nothing. "You look grown," she said with a tight smile. Alina merely nodded. Trevor rose from the dining table with a sheepish grin, wearing a designer suit and visible effort. "Hey, Lena! Wow, you're glowing." Elise gave a performative squeal. "We've missed you. Can't believe how long it's been." Alina sat without responding. She didn't need to fake politeness. She had power now. And power was always quiet. The dinner was stiff. No one mentioned Pulse One until dessert. But then Margot leaned in and asked casually, "How's your project going?" "It's an empire," Alina said calmly. "Not a project." Margot chuckled nervously. "Well, that's wonderful. I was thinking, with our history, it would be smart to keep things in the family. If there are investment opportunities, I'm sure Trevor and Elise would love to contribute. We all would." Alina placed her wine glass down and looked each of them in the eyes. "You threw me out without hesitation," she said softly. "You made me believe I was unworthy of my own name. Now you see me on magazine covers, and suddenly I'm family again." Margot's smile faltered. Trevor looked away. Elise cleared her throat. "You didn't lose an inheritance," Alina said, her voice steady. "You lost a person. You lost me." She rose before anyone could respond. The air behind her stayed heavy as she walked out the front door, the same door she'd once been pushed through years ago with nothing in her hands but dignity. Now she had the world. 2 days after the dinner, the Cruz family requests began flooding in, no longer cloaked in politeness. Trevor reached out first, pitching an exclusive crypto platform designed to modernize legacy banking. He asked for $2 million. Elise followed with a breathy voice memo describing a wellness collab between her fashion brand and Pulse One, despite having no tech background. Her angle was that vibes are the new medicine. Even Margot wasn't subtle. She requested a $5 million strategic realignment investment into the family's remaining estate properties. They'd masked it as business, but Alina saw it for what it was, begging dressed in Gucci. She declined them all, politely but definitively. And when Margot called to demand an explanation, Alina's response was swift. "I don't invest in entitlement." That single sentence traveled through the crew's family group chat like wildfire. And what came next was anything but polite. Margot took her refusal as personal betrayal. Her fury exploded at a private fundraiser when she was overheard ranting that Alina was a thief wearing lipstick and that some people need to be reminded who the Cruz family really is. It made it to TikTok by morning. A leaked 15-second video, poorly lit but clearly audible. Alina didn't respond publicly. She didn't need to. That week, Pulse One inked a licensing deal with a top-tier hospital network, boosting its valuation to over $95 million. Investors celebrated. Media outlets praised her poise. And the Cruz name? It was now associated more with bitterness than prestige. Still, Margot wasn't done. If Alina wouldn't share, she'd take. The Cruz family filed a legal claim disputing Don Mateo's will. They alleged mental unfitness, claiming Mateo had been manipulated or coerced during his final days. Their lawyer, a sharp-tongued man named Gerard Laskin, painted Alina as a cunning schemer who preyed on an old man's loneliness. Alina had expected it. She arrived in court wearing a navy blue blazer, hair pinned back, eyes calm. She sat beside Mr. Locke, the attorney who had served Mateo for 25 years. The Cruz family entered like royalty, heads high, until they saw the cameras. They didn't expect a public hearing. They didn't expect this much attention. And they certainly didn't expect what happened next. On the third day of trial, Mr. Locke stood before the court and presented a flash drive. "Your Honor," he said, "the deceased, Don Mateo Cruz, left a video statement to accompany his will. We request it be played now." The courtroom held its breath. The video flickered to life. Mateo appeared on screen, seated in his study, voice clear and unwavering. "If my family is watching this, it means you're challenging my wishes. Let me be plain. Alina is the only one who came when I was sick, the only one who didn't ask for anything. She is my legacy. If you're fighting this now, then you've proved me right." The silence afterward was unbearable. Even the judge paused. The Cruz family's case collapsed that afternoon. Alina walked out of the courthouse to applause from reporters. Trevor refused to meet her gaze. Elise put on sunglasses to hide her embarrassment. And Margot, she left through a side door, her pride in pieces. By the end of the week, the judge had not only dismissed the lawsuit but ruled that the Cruz family had acted in bad faith. They were ordered to pay Alina's legal fees, nearly $300,000. The media framed it as a poetic reversal of fortune. Pulse One's downloads tripled in 48 hours. Alina received an invitation to speak at a global entrepreneurship summit in Paris. Her name now carried weight, not just in her city, but across industries. And the Cruz family? They began selling assets in silence. The estate they once bragged about had fallen under debt review. Elise's brand fizzled. Trevor's followers turned on him, calling him the cousin who cried crypto. Their collapse was slow and completely self-inflicted. The Cruz mansion went up for private auction 6 months later. It had been appraised lower than expected, worn down by years of neglect and scandal. Alina made one offer. She bought it. When the deed arrived in the mail, she stared at it for a long time. This house was never her home. Now it was her property. She didn't move in. Instead, she announced the launch of the Mateo Foundation, a nonprofit incubator housed inside the mansion dedicated to helping young entrepreneurs from underserved backgrounds start their first companies. She turned the place that once shut her out into a door opener for others. A month after the foundation's opening, a video began circulating online. Margot, red-eyed and disheveled, was filmed at a boutique wine bar in a nearby town, ranting about Alina stealing everything and sobbing into a half-empty glass. The video was cruel, but viral. People in the comments weren't sympathetic. She kicked out the girl who ended up feeding her city. Sit down, Margot. That's karma in a pearl necklace. She inherited shame. Alina didn't comment. She simply kept building. She was done with revenge. She was after something greater. Trevor showed up at the foundation first, portfolio in hand, asking to pitch his latest business plan. He was turned away at the door. Elise emailed Devon directly, begging for a meeting with Alina to rebuild the bridge. She never received a reply. Margot wrote a formal letter, handwritten, tear-stained, stamped with the last ounce of dignity she had. She asked for forgiveness. And money. The letter ended with, "Please don't forget we are your family." Alina never responded. She didn't need to. They had forgotten her first. At a tech summit in San Francisco, Alina took the stage in front of 10,000 founders, investors, and journalists. She shared the journey from an empty warehouse to a health tech empire, from shame to power, from discarded to desired. She ended her speech with a quote from Mateo, etched into her mind forever. Legacy isn't what you're born into. It's what you build when no one believes you can. The room erupted in applause. When she stepped off stage, a young woman in the audience ran up to her. "You're the reason I didn't give up," she said, shaking. Alina smiled. That was all she needed. Years later, Alina stood at the grand opening of the third Mateo Center, this one in New York. A journalist asked her the question everyone wanted to know. If the Cruz family reached out now, would you ever forgive them? Alina paused, then replied softly, "I don't hold on to anger, but I don't open doors for people who tried to lock me out." She turned back to the ribbon-cutting ceremony, surrounded by new founders, mentors, and young creators, many of whom had their own Cruz families to escape. As the cameras flashed and applause echoed, one thing became clear. Alina Cruz was no longer the girl they kicked out. She was the empire they never saw coming.